At 5:30, I got here at 8:30.
Someone told me a story this morning that they had friends who were staying and visiting Westford. From Westford to, West Lebanon was 6.5 hours.
Oh, yeah, it was bumper, you could see it, all you see was headlights,
Now we have something for the story to tell.
right?
We have to, we have
It's
to.
kind of like Woodstock back in the day.
That's right. Without the.
Senator Williams, were you there?
No, I was not. I wanted to go, but I think I was in the army.
I think you were. Welcome back to Senate Education. Tom Little, General Counsel of Vermont Student Assistance Corporation on H 874. So,
Thank you very
Mr. Little,
much.
the floor is yours.
Thank you for inviting me to testify and discuss this with you. I should start out, trying to make a distinction that I think we'll pick up, later on in the discussion, that you may have already identified this yourself, and that, and it's sort of it's a little nuanced, but VSAC plays sort of a particular role. We don't recommend particular careers to students, but instead we try to provide them with education and training pathways that enable them and their parents on their behalf to have access to the financial aid they need to make informed choices about post-high school education, training, careers. We think we've become a pretty trusted source of information and guidance, in significant part because we remain neutral about specific school and career choices, trying to stick to our lane, providing objective information about financial aid and the broad range of choices available to students. And we've been committed, roots are here in this work, to include in our financial aid and planning information in interactions with students, all available post-secondary degree and non-degree programs. Our website includes National Guard and other armed services options. And at the request of the Guard, we are developing some additional references in our information materials. We prefer to work through this kind of collaborative model than with a statutory mandate that seems too broad and hard to administer, as at least as written, for those reasons. We provide content on how military service can be a resource for paying for higher education. And in recent conversations with Deputy Adjutant General Harder, I really encourage you to hear from him if you hadn't. He's relatively new. He took over for Kenneth Bragg, who you may have heard from the prior year, who worked as a liaison with the General Assembly for quite a while. We seem to be aligned on how we can work together. We were not invited into the House Education Committee. We didn't have a chance to talk about this with that committee before it went. I think they were under a real deadline crunch to get out before crossover. But while we're not sure that there's a real need for legislation, the current text could be interpreted very broadly, and are concerned about the next series of requests for amending the statute and other specific types of career options. We don't promote, as I mentioned, any particular career path or career with students and families, but try to keep an independent voice and allow the students and parents to drive the conversation. Much like we would not be an expert or a specific advocate to be a licensed plumber or a doctor, once the student narrows their goals, we help them navigate the next step and how to pay for the education or training needed. And our team members, and this includes people who we call their work title is called the outreach counselors, and they are spread around the state in the high schools and who work in the middle schools as well. And they are a supplement, in a sense, to the existing school counselors who often have everything else on their minds and on their plates. other than post-high school planning and options. And that's our focus, is trying to cultivate the aspiration to do something beyond high school. Something, doesn't have to be college, conventions college. And to try to help them develop the confidence that they do that. And that's a huge step or leap in some cases for students and their families, particularly if the family is not one where there have been any or very few people who've gone on beyond high school. And what we found, interestingly, is that decision to not do something like that after college is made by 7th or 8th grade. So that if somebody doesn't really start thinking about it around the kitchen table until they're a sophomore or junior in high school, it's much tougher. And the narrative, their individual's internal narrative can be very hard to overcome.
And that's right in line with what we've heard about getting students involved with career technical education at a younger age as well.
I just, my own example is I have a 19-year-old grandson who graduated from Virginia's high school last June and is now in the Coast Guard. He was not interested in or ready for conventional college or university work, and on his own did the research, and I'm very proud of him, but a little nervous at times. But it's going to give me a reason to go visit him down in Georgia, down in Savannah. So that's the distinction we're trying to make, and it isn't a clear, bright line between where you leave our conventional focus role and sort of recruiting or advocating a particular job or career. We do hold college fair type events that we collaborate with. We've done them at Linden, Castleton, Bennington. We did one at UVM recently, and that's sort of wide open. Anyone who wants to set up a table, including the National Guard, do come. And those are great. Those are hundreds and hundreds of students and parents show up for those things. St. Michael's had one recently. There's one happening tomorrow in Castleton. I'm told that is a high school guidance counselors have everybody has a trade association, right? They have an organization, and they're holding some kind of a college or post high school event, and you've got Coast Guard, the Air National Guard, and the Army National Guard coming to that tomorrow. Castleton. I'll follow up with something in writing that I'll send to Morgan and show you exactly what we have on our website and in our written materials. I'm very excited that my first meeting with Deputy Adjutant General Harder was very good. He's got a lot of energy. He's been in the Guard for almost 35 years. He's a pilot. And I tried to connect with him last week. He was on business guard work down in Texas. See if he could help me understand what the testimony we're getting last Friday from the person who was from the Civil Air Patrol, that function, and I haven't connected with Harder about that yet. So I wasn't able to watch that, but I watched it over the weekend. So, and I know that from talking to the Adjutant General Harder, that they think they would like something in this, something in Section 8. And working with Scott Giles at VSEC, we're developing what we might call an alternative duet, which I can get to you in a couple of days as well. The language, make a couple comments on the specific language in Section 8. It's got a lot of expansive words in it, like all, and then military related options. And, all planning resources. I mean, we have materials and websites, for example, for our college savings plan, 529. And we don't think it would make sense to embed this type of material in there necessarily. There are web links there that take you to the DSAC website where you could then go to find things that do mention the National Guard and other armed forces opportunities. We have materials that are focused on the nurse forgivable loan program. And like what that might not be a good fit for this type of material. So we'll probably come back with something that's, I mean, ideally would be focused on the programs that we actually administer for the Guard and for state of Vermont. And as you know, those have kind of expanded over the last few years with the pandemic funds. So we now have, this was the first forgivable loan program we ever did. It was like the origins of the idea in Vermont. And now we do them for a variety of trades and careers, mental health workers, nurse faculty. I'd like kind of lose track of them.
Teachers.
Teachers. There's a separate teachers forgivable sort of loan forgiveness program, which doesn't provide the funding up front. It just pays down the loan if the person works in that profession for a particular number of years. So we've got an open mind about this, but when you see something in a bill that says you shall do this, our reaction was, well, we thought we were doing this, or we thought anyone who's asked us, we've tried to work with them to get this, help them with their needs, to satisfy their needs. And if there's ever been a misunderstanding about that, we just need to talk and try to work through it.
Senator Stevens.
Thank you. So that was one area that I wanted to talk a bit more about, which is the language itself, like the word shall and any and all. And what I'm envisioning, I'm curious to your interpretation too, but let's say there's a student, CTE student who wants to become a professional carpenter, reaches out to VSAC looking for opportunities. Would the person at the other end, the VSAC employee, have to provide any and all military related opportunities regardless of what the kid is looking for?
Well, I don't think it goes quite that far, because at the end of the sentence it says in all planning resources it produces. So it's not saying in each encounter or engagement with a student or a parent, you have to give them absolutely everything. So I think if they're asking the counselor or they're at one of these college fairs and they ask someone for VSAC, that's what I think I want to do. What's the best way to get there? You can, I think, go with that conversation. But it's broadly worded, and I'm not at the meeting with we also found out at the meeting with the Deputy Acting General Harder that there were some things that the Guard is using for these materials now that are outdated. They're going to update those materials, and he's given us some ideas about some other places we could drop references to the Guard. But again, our mission is to look at the Guard not as sort of the destination for the student, but as a way, as part of a menu of post high school options and career and education opportunities. And it's a terrific recruiting, all that is a terrific recruiting asset for the Guard. And it's General Harder will tell you if he comes in, it's really helped them over the last 10 years ago, if they would have come in and said they were really, really worried because they were losing recruits to New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Maine, and New York. And this program, and so I think some more targeted recruiting efforts really helped them.
So I'm
be
confused, if
competitive.
you don't mind, Tom, why were they losing folks to those other states?
I don't think they really knew. I don't think they
Okay.
really knew. It was, I think some of this stuff is cyclical.
Okay.
And it's a lot of word of mouth. If somebody thinks, well, there's a program in Maine that's better than Vermont, I want to go look at that. And
Yeah,
the thing that really stung them was there was someone relatively senior in the Vermont Guard who's had a child who went to college in Maine to go through and join the Maine Guards. That's for Frost.
What's that?
The Frost.
So I can give some context
Yeah.
to the guard part of it, because I was involved in this back when General Don Edwards was the acting general,
Ah,
1988. He was the one that started setting the standard higher for the enlisted and the officers of the guard, because it was getting to be more of a competitive. They were downsizing the military. So he went to St. Michael's College. St. Michael's actually, he gave them some land from Camp Johnson for an athletic field in exchange for some opportunities for scholarship with St. Mike's. But, and it came back to the civilian acquired skills that were, the guardsmen were actually able to use to help to enhance their career opportunities in the military. And then they took the military through VSAC. VSAC was involved in it. They took their military careers and they actually created position descriptions that could end up being equal to college credits. So they got a lot. The education community in Vermont got more guardsmen involved in the schools, and the guardsmen ended up getting. I was a recipient of that, because I only had an associate degree, and I was an officer, and they were gonna throw me out if I didn't get my bachelor's degree. So I took a lot of my military skills and transferred them through the Vermont State College system into credits, so I could get my bachelor's degree. So there's a lot to it, and the guard ended up being, it was, gee, this is an opportunity for you as a guardsman, so it was a good recruiting tool for the National Guard, and DSAC helped to fund it. So,
and one of the things that, these are forgivable loans, and the Guard, most of them are forgiven. It's a very, very low rate at which, if the person either doesn't finish the education program that they signed up, that they promised that they would do, and don't complete their guard service as they signed up for, then the loan goes into repayment. That ratio, very, very low
Yep.
rate of that, because the guard is they're very, I think, skilled and experienced at making it work for the recruits.
it also enabled the guard to get into the high schools, because a lot of the counselors, the guidance counselors, had these students on a career track for higher education. A lot of them didn't want to go. They didn't know what they.
Yeah, so it's even another option.
Correct, so they were able to get into the guard.
Yeah.
Experience life a little bit, and then come back and say, yeah, I got that on my way now, I wanna get on to college. Well, they were able to come off active duty into the guard, and then apply through VSAC for funding to help.
Yeah.
Because the GI Bill wasn't really available to them, because that was a time in the history of the United States when we weren't in a lot of conflicts. So they weren't eligible for GI Bill. So it's funny how it evolves, and it really worked out for the guardsmen and for everybody in Vermont.
I will get you some language that we would think would be a better balance, and it's easier to administer, and maybe even a little legislative language that shows, that reflects that we've been already been doing this. And just encourage if anyone would like VSAC to be doing anything a little bit differently, just reach out and we'll talk about it.
Sounds good. Senator Weeks.
Thanks, sir. So I'm kind of wondering out loud if we're really targeting the wrong group. That it's not a matter of access to, or VSAC providing access to materials. It's access to the schools. I think, what I've heard anecdotally is that that's the fundamental problem with military options. Whether they be education options or service options, post-graduation.
People not being allowed in.
Right, so.
We have Representative Stone here from House Energy. Did you take any of that testimony? Did you happen to hear anything like that where
Yes,
schools?
that's why I said that we're following it to the, like, letter of law, but not spirit of law, like, we've heard
I
over and
see.
over again, both. We had like Major General Night In, also heard outside at an event that was at Norwich University last fall, that oftentimes they go to the school and they're not treated, if they're not treated the same, they're put into the guidance counselor's office, it's not always publicized that they're even there. To give out information, they may not even be like, they don't always necessarily have the same treatment when they go to these career fairs. If they're even there, they're, put in like the back corner. It's just not, the information isn't equitably communicated to students is what we're hearing again and again from the field. And again, it's not forcing anyone to go into the military, but
Yeah,
knowing
but
that
just
that
having
is
the
an
information.
option.
Yeah.
Just like, going to Norwich versus UVM versus Castleton.
Yeah.
They are finding that it's increasingly difficult to even get the information to the students so they know that it's even an option.
Senator Taylor and Senator Weeks.
I believe this falls into the category of local control, because I believe I sat on the school board when we had this discussion, and we had a student come in and say, I really don't want military promoting the military in my school, and as a left-leaning, perhaps, person in, politics, I had to say, the Air Force saved my dad's life. I mean, the fact that he had that option is what set him on a path for his whole life. So I actually spoke in favor of making sure that we have literature around the armed forces in our schools, but again, like, I do think that's a local control thing. So you have to talk to your school board if it's something that you feel strongly about.
So
No,
it's funny because, now that the National Guard, Chief of the National Guard Bureau is a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, their recruiting has to comply with the active component. They're only allowed by law 1 day and to be able to go into the schools. Where before, the National Guard was a political organization and they could get into any school anytime they wanted to. And that was the advantage of having guard people, is that they knew the teachers, they knew the principals and the superintendents, and they could go in pretty much anytime they
so
wanted.
you're saying it's federal.
Correct.
Yes.
And the active component couldn't because, right, so it's all politics. I know because I was a recruiting manager for the debate,
Interesting.
so I was school trained to do it.
Is that the same though as having literature out and available? Only 1 day?
Yeah.
Really?
And active component still looks down at the guard, pushes them off to the side because they want the
want the
student to join the active duty
Right, right,
altogether.
Interesting.
That is- Senator Weeks.
Yeah, I just wanted to reflect.
Oh, and Senator Williams, don't forget you have to leave.
Okay, yeah,
Right. So make
I
sure.
got 50 seconds.
All right.
Just want to reflect on Senator Hewitt's point. I understand and agree with what you said. But I wanted to reflect on a quote from Senator Hardy that we make the law. So if we direct a school to allow access, we direct a school to allow access.
But it was a federal law, there's not much you can do about it.
Oh, so, okay, so guard as well. Did you say there was a caveat for guard or?
No, they used to,
Yeah.
Interesting. But yeah, we could always.
apologize.
So I will get you, we'll
Yeah,
get
you-
you some
great,
proposed language and we'll be happy to come back and join in the discussion again.
Great,
I think there's plenty of room here for a good.
great. Yeah, if you'll email that to us, then we'll have you back in. And you know, Mr. Feldman.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you. Ms. Zimmerman, how are you?
I am well, thanks. How are you?
Great. Sorry, your testimony got
Oh, God,
pushed.
that's all good, and I apologize for losing power.
What's that?
I lost power, that. was
Oh,
my-
that's right, that's right.
Originally, so.
Rep Stone, if you want, we'll try to remember, to send you the language or ask Claire to send you the language that he sends us.
Yes, that would be helpful, and I just got Major General Knight to help you as well, so.
Oh, great.
with the Conversations.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Zimmerman. So we are talking, centers H 871, shifting back to enacting the development, updated state age construction program.
Great, good afternoon, for the record, I'm Kara Zimmerman, from the Vermont School Boards Association. Thank you for inviting me to testify in support of H 871. Just as a little background, the foundation for my testimony today, our members adopted a resolution on general education construction that reads the moratorium on school construction aid should be removed. Schools require predictability and stability in state aid in order to plan successfully over the long term. The moratorium on school construction aid has significantly contributed to a backlog of school construction projects and the decline of school facilities conditions statewide. This has resulted in less safe and less healthy learning environments, as well as disparities in the quality of education between better resourced communities and high-need districts. Just to put the urgency in context, 61.1% of Vermont public schools are nearing the end of their useful or serviceable life. We support H 871 because it puts Vermont onto a path to address the urgent and significant school facilities needs in a thoughtful and systematic way. We spent significant time following this bill's development in the House Education Committee and felt that the process was a good one. Switching gears to the language in H 873, I know you're all familiar with. I just want to say that we are aware that that language was in an earlier version of H 871. So as you continue your work, we just want to make sure that we make all of you know that we are strongly advocating for a pause in the PCB testing program so that PCBs can be addressed alongside a comprehensive statewide plan for addressing school construction. Thank you.
Please, send these.
Gotta get the question.
Good.
So in
Oh, I
your
didn't
testimony,
answer.
you highlighted the 61% of Vermont public schools nearing or at the end, nearing the end of their useful or serviceable life. What kind of criteria would you?
That was from one of the facilities reports. So we just took the top two categories and added that percentage together.
So would that assume though, that's if they're not touched with renovation funds or?
Correct. And the report is definitely the authority.
Yeah, no,
But- We just took that number.
yeah, because, you know, if you theoretically use the same criteria for all of our houses, if we didn't touch them with renovation, you know, that type of percentage would apply to all of our houses, but of course, it's not how we treat our houses or our public buildings. We constantly renovate and restore. Yeah, anyway, I just wondered what the genesis of the 60%.
Yeah, that's the report.
It's interesting, the moratorium was put on, I think, a year or two before I arrived in the building. And I know it was a difficult time financially, it was the Great Recession. It's still kind of interesting that folks didn't leave it up to local decision making in that regard. And this is just me reflecting that it was people at the state level were so concerned at that point that schools would run up bills basically, moratorium on. And I don't remember much of a come up every year, I feel like in the legislature to lift it, but never much of a push. So in part, that's the situation, created the situation
here we are.
in now.
Correct.
You know, yeah, correct.
Well, didn't we kind of in effect leave it to the local decision level? Because if they didn't want to bond, they wouldn't
Yeah,
bond, they would.
That's right, they could, yeah.
They could, right.
They could.
Nobody prevented them from doing it, they just didn't have any states.
Yeah,
And then that's
That's
created
good.
an equity issue
Yeah.
because some
Districts
communities
have
are
it.
able to raise that money and others aren't, so.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Did you drive all the way for that? Okay.
Thank
We
you
have
for
the
your
Attorney
concern.
General coming in, over Zoom or over? Okay, you want to let the